with FSA ID is they're introducing this thing called multi-factor authentication. And so they are going to, as part of the process, going to ask you to enter in your email. They're going to send you a code to your email. You're going to put that code in there. They're going to text you a code to your telephone number. You're going to enter in that code to really authenticate that it is you who is accessing this information. There is also talk about using an authentication app. There's an app called Duo that if they do use, they'll ask you at the process to download that app. And basically it's a way to send a notification to your telephone, to your computer, to ensure that you're the one who is signing in. So they just really want to make sure that your FSA ID is protected, that it's you who's using it, and that nobody has access to it. If you guys want to hover your camera from your phones over this QR code, it's going to send you a 6-minute step-by-step video on how to create your FSA ID. It's really super simple. It's going to ask you things like your name, your phone number, your address. It asks you to pick some challenge questions just in case you forget your username or password. They're going to do that security code checking. So this is something that you can do right now as you're waiting for the Fafsa to open. Questions right now, you guys, about FSA ID, how to create it, why we use it, how important it is. Yes, you can totally do it now. Okay, if you want to take a picture of any slide, this is the slide I always encourage students and families to take a picture of, because this is the secret behind the financial aid process. One of the biggest questions we get is, Miss Layla, how do colleges know how much money I need? And I tell them, well, they ask you 2 kinds of questions. They ask you questions about your college plans. So seniors, students are going to ask you, what types of colleges are you interested in applying to? Are you applying to community colleges? Are you applying to CSUs? Are you applying to UCs? Are you applying to private schools or trade schools, out-of-state schools? They want to know what kinds of colleges are you interested in attending to determine your COA, which is your cost of attendance. How much is it going to cost you to go to college next year for the entire year? So they need to know that number so that they know how much money you need. Then they're going to ask you and your parents some financial questions. They're going to ask you things like, do your parents work? How much money do they earn from work? What kinds of assets do they have? Do they own multiple properties? Do they own a business? Do you have a savings account? They're going to ask you all of this information to determine, can you or your parents help fund your education? And the new term for that is now called your student aid index. Okay, so they're going to take your cost of attendance, how much they think that it's going to cost for you to go to school. They're going to subtract what they think your family can help you with to determine how much money you need. Okay, and they do this mathematical equation for every single person who completes the FAFSA and the CADA. Okay, so they do this for everyone. Now, when we talk about cost of attendance, we're talking about everything it costs for you to go to school. So if you were to Google cost of attendance for Sac State, you're going to get numbers like 28,000. Google cost of attendance for UC, you're going to get numbers like 38,000. Private schools are like 70,000. And students and families go, oh my gosh, times 4. Like, there's just no way I'm going to be able to afford that. Well, I want us as students and families to understand that that is an estimation of what it would cost for an entire year. And we as students and families have control over a lot of it. So that's your housing for an entire year, your books for an entire year, all the food you're going to eat for an entire year, all of your transportation expenses for an entire year. That can include gas for an entire year, your personal expenses, your clothes, your shoes, your papers and pencils for an entire year. So they're estimating pretty big. So what I like to tell you guys is that we as students and families have a lot of control of some of this. So we have control over where we buy our books and supplies, right? So we don't have to go to Target, we can go to Walmart, we can go to the dollar store, so we can control how much we're spending. For transportation, college students typically do not take their cars to school. They're walking, they're riding bikes, they're using public transportation, they're scooting around on scooters. So that's one way to keep our costs down. Food, I encourage all of our students to learn how to cook. A lot of our college students love noodles, noodles in a cup, noodles in a bag, noodles in a bowl. And then personal expenses, we have a lot of choice as to where we spend our money. Right now, thrifting is really big. So students love to go to the Goodwill, love to go to thrift stores. So I want you to understand that that cost of attendance estimate is just that. It's an estimate. Will your students spend that much? More than likely, they're not going to, okay? But they do use that information to determine how much you need. Your student aid index, you guys, like I said, comes directly from the information that you enter into your FAFSA, into your CADA. It helps determine your eligibility for financial aid. And they use this to kind of figure out your financial need, okay? So let me show you something. So here are some examples. On the left-hand side, you see cost of attendance minus student aid index equals financial need. The very top number is the cost of attendance estimate for different types of schools. So in this example, I'm using CRC as our community college example, Sac State as our CSU example, UC Davis as our UC example, and UOP in Stockton as our private school example. So these top numbers are what they estimate our cost of attendance is going to be. And then I had a student complete their FAFSA and their student aid index came to $4,000. So that meant that the federal government in the state of California thinks that throughout that year, that family can support that student with about $4,000. That doesn't mean you owe the school $4,000. That doesn't mean you owe your student $4,000. They just think that within that year, you do have some funds available to help them. Maybe you send them a Costco care package. Maybe you help with gas. Maybe you buy them a computer for that year. So just know it's not a number that you owe anyone. So they subtract those two numbers and they come up with your financial need. So if I was going to a community college like CRC, Sac City, ARC, Sierra, Yuba College, wherever it is I'm going, my estimated cost of attendance is $17,000. They're going to subtract what my student aid index is. So they're telling me I'm going to need about $13,000 to attend a community college to ensure that all of my cost of attendance needs are met. Same thing for Sac State, I would need $24,000. UC Davis, I would need $37,000. To go to UOP, I would need $68,000. And they do this recalculation every single year you submit your FAFSA and CADA. So I want you guys to remember that as students and parents, we renew our FAFSAs and our CADAs every single year. For you, this year, your deadlines are December to April. But next year and going forward, it's going to be October 1st through March 2nd. So every year you renew your FAFSA, they renew your calculation, and they figure out your financial need, and then they meet that need, okay? So the next question that happens is, that's great, Miss Layla, but where does all this money come from? So if I need $13,000 and my friend needs $37,000 and then my other friend needs $24,000, then that's just three of us. What about everybody else? How do they come up with all this money? So it comes from all kinds of places. Comes from the federal government. The state of California wants to give you some money. Employers, so there's an opportunity for students to work through a program called Work Study, so it could be a working job. Private sources like scholarships. And you'll be surprised, a lot of our colleges and universities will give money to our students as well. So they go into all their pots to be able to meet your financial need. So the first pot I like to talk about, you guys, is our Cal Grant. Okay, what I want you guys to understand about Cal Grant is that California's job is to help pay your students' tuition. So if you're taking notes, I want you to write